Yeah.
There you go. We're official.
All right, good enough. Well, thank you all for joining the KMAC meeting for October 25th here at 2022. This is a Zoom meeting. It looks like that we have members that are present are Raul, Chris Brighton, the vice chair, and Lowell Cowell, and myself, Patrick Tahara. So we have four of us. So we have a quorum. I don't. There's only one item that we will have to have a recommendation on or approval on, and we do have a quorum. So that said, we are at roll call. We just had that. At this point in time, I have more citizens' comments. These are comments that are made at the that are not part of the meeting tonight.
There we go. I was going to say, maybe Robert, you can help with this, and or Will, maybe, who's come on. My neighbor asked me the other day, we had a structure fire at 219 Yale about a year ago. I guess it was an arson fire, pretty well known. The property still is littered with trash. And I mean, everything that was thrown out, the burnt mattresses, furniture, it's strewn. So it's a street below me, but it's strewn kind of with trash and et cetera, et cetera. Nobody seems to know what the status is of the property. We've heard it may be sold, but the neighbors asked that, is there anything that the county could do to either clean the property, just at least so it's not so bad, or what are the opportunities or options for the community to do something about it?
The answer is yes, Chris, and Will can jump in also if he has something on this. But the answer is yes, and this being a situation of unkempt or dangerous private property, this is not something the county can just go out and clean up tomorrow. Right. This requires a code enforcement case to be brought. I assume someone has reported this, although it's possible they have not. We have an online reporting system that's really helpful. Okay. And so what we have to do is issue violations on the property to force the property owner to keep their property in better condition.
Okay, so I'll go back and I'll tell the two neighbors on either side of the property. I'm behind it. I don't really mind from my side. It doesn't look so bad. But I think from the Yale side, it's pretty ugly. So I will tell them that their option. So do they just go to, where would they go? www.contra-costacounty.com. Where would they go to
Let me help, Chris. Why don't you send me an email explaining what the property is, where it is, and I'll give you the tools you need, and you can share with your neighbors to make progress happen.
Perfect. Thanks, Robert. Do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for all visibility. If you want to say, I actually know that particular neighbor across that's right next to that neighbor. That's part of that as well. And so Thank you, Robert, for sharing that. And thank you, Chris, for providing that information with regards to what the county could do. I know that I had provided some information of trying to report that to the Kensington Police Department in terms of health and safety issues, but that might be something that actually the county can enforce than the local Kensington police.
Correct. She indicated she had gone to the chief, and the chief was doing, was looking into it, but I don't think it's a law enforcement.
Yeah, that's why
it really isn't. It's going to be in a county code enforcement act, because it's not just blight, it's theoretically hazardous materials.
It's a hazardous and health concerns as well.
Okay, I will. I'll put your note, Robert, and then whatever you give me, I'll print and I'll take down to him and say, here's your way to take action.
Great, thank you. Are there any other citizens' comments? Okay, let's move to the next item, which is the approval of the meeting notes for September 28th, 2022. I apologize for getting those out so late, though I did get them out. I'm the one who wrote those up as complete as I could, understanding I could. So is there any discussion about the meeting notes that were sent through?
8:02 is not late. 8:02 a.m. is not late, Patrick. So no, they read clear to me, so I'm comfortable with them.
Okay. Lloyd, Rule, any comments on those?
It's all
No
good, Patrick.
comments.
All right. So then, do I hear a motion?
I will
make a
make a
motion.
motion. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead. Go ahead.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will second that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a motion from Rule and a second from Chris to recommend approval or approve of the meeting notes for the September 28th, 2022 meeting. Any discussion regarding the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have Raul, Lloyd, Chris, and myself, Patrick, all ayes. Are there, and there's no notes because I don't believe that Larry has joined us. So so we have 4 ayes and 0 nays. All right. So with that, I think the next item on the agenda is the presentation by the County Department of Conservation and Development on Envision 2040 updates to the Contra Costa General Plan. And I believe that Will Nelson from DCD is here to present. I will stop sharing and you can start your presentation. Thank you, Will, for joining us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Chair Tahara, and members of the council. I'm happy to be back here. We've done a couple presentations on this topic before, and we have made quite a bit of headway since we spoke with you last, as far as bringing a new general plan to us all. So I'm going to go through the presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you have, if that suits you. Okay, let me share my screen. Hopefully you are now seeing the first page.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. So Envision, whoops, why did it not advance? Okay, there we go. So for those who are unfamiliar, Envision Contra Costa 2040 is an update of 3 county planning documents, the general plan, the zoning code, and the climate action plan. The Board of Supervisors instructed us to do this all the way back in December of 2017. And so we've been working on it for quite a while, had a couple unexpected events in the meantime, but we're making a lot of headway. So it's those 3 documents, and they will all be covered by an environmental impact report. So first, what is general plan? It is jurisdiction's highest land use planning document. Sometimes people call it the Constitution for land use planning. So all of our decisions have to be consistent with the general plan. So, you know, subdivisions, rezonings, use permits, development plans, all these things, these application types that come to you for review have to be consistent with the county's general plan. So it sets the basis for our decisions, but it's also a visionary document. You know, this one's going to go out till 2040. So, you know, we're trying to strike this balance between being pragmatic, but also aspirational. Part of that is balancing growth and conservation in the county while maintaining our quality of life. Yeah, that's a broad overview of the GP of what it is. It affects us in many ways. So as you're all, I'm sure, familiar with the land use map, it determines where housing can go, where businesses can go, where industry can go. It addresses community design and character, roadway design, you know, how wide our major thoroughfares are going to be, for example. Public facilities and services, parks, police stations, fire stations, flood control infrastructure, resource conservation, all these things are addressed in our general plan. And so, you know, when you look at the built environment or the unbuilt environment around us, there's a good chance that that the general plan had something to do with that, either the way it was developed, and in a lot of cases, the fact that it wasn't developed. So why are we updating it now? Well, the general plan is going to be 32 in January, and which means it reflects 1980s thinking. and a lot has changed since then. We have just the practice, the planning practice has changed. Back then, kind of single family sprawling subdivisions were still a thing, and today we're more about mixed uses and density and such. We've had many laws, of course, that have come along in the last 3 decades, but a lot of the more recent ones, like SB 375, the Sustainable Community Strategy, that has led to a document called Plan Bay Area that some of you may have heard of. Assembly Bill 379, Climate Change Adaptation and Resilience, SB 1000, dealing with environmental justice. In the news all the time, it seems there's another law coming from Sacramento related to housing. And then, and wildfire and public safety, that in the last handful of years, a lot of new legislation about wildfire. And then there are many other plans, some of which didn't even exist back when our general plan was adopted, that we need to now align with, including the Delta Plan, the county's local hazard mitigation plan. So there are just many, many reasons. These are just a handful of the reasons that we need to update this 30-plus-year-old document. The general plan is made up of several chapters called elements. So there are 7 required elements from the state, and the existing general plan elements are in the column on the left. So of those, land use, transportation, housing, conservation, open space, safety, and noise are the state mandated elements. We have a growth management element in this county due to a ballot measure that was passed some years ago, Measure C 1988, which gave us the half-cent sales tax that we all pay for transportation improvements, which was then extended by Measure J in 2004. So that's where our growth management element comes from. And then the public facilities and services element just seems like a kind of a basic element to have in a general plan. I'm actually surprised it's not a state mandated one, but the state says that you can add any elements you want to, you can arrange them any way you want to. You just have to cover those 7 basic topics. So in the new general plan, we'll have the elements in the right-hand column. A lot of them are the same. We've combined some, but you'll see health and safety is in there. It's not just safety anymore. We folded the noise element content into that element as well. And then the stronger communities element is a new one, and I'll go into that more in a couple slides. So when the Board of Supervisors instructed DCD to update the general plan, they told us to weave these 4 themes into the document or through the document. So economic development, environmental justice, sustainability, and community health. The existing plan is essentially silent on sustainability and community health. It touches lightly on economic development, and there's nothing really in there about environmental justice either. Environmental justice, as I mentioned, is a requirement of Senate Bill 1000, but the other ones are current planning issues that any modern general plan should address. So going back to that stronger communities element, that's sort of the home of these topics. So while they do span the other elements, and you will find policies and actions in most of the elements related to these 4 themes, for the most part, they're going to be in the stronger communities element, especially environmental justice. So people who have ever dealt with a general plan, if there's one part of it that they've probably come across, it's the land use map. And here is the existing land use map for Contra Costa County. So our jurisdiction is only the unincorporated county. So on this map, the cities, the incorporated cities, which we don't have planning jurisdiction over, are grayed out. So it's all the parts of this map that are in color are our jurisdiction. And all these different colors have different meaning. And as you can see, much of the county is some shade of green or blue. These various shades, the sort of emerald color is parks and recreation. So you'll see like Mount Diablo State Park, the various holdings of the East Bay Regional Park District. The light blue is watershed. These are protected lands, so you see them around the major reservoirs of East Bay Mud and Contra Costa Water District. The sort of olive green, and then there's some lighter greens out in the eastern part of the county, or various agricultural land use designations, Delta Recreation. The kind of lime green is open space, and that really dark blue is public facilities. So the ones that really jump out are the Military Ocean Terminal in Concord, camp parks, the county airports, that sort of thing. So all the other colors, the various yellows and browns, reds, purples, those are all the urban uses like housing and businesses and refineries, industry, that sort of thing. And so as you can see, it's actually a relatively, when you look at the entirety of our planning jurisdiction, a lot of it isn't the built environment. And but these various colors mean different things. So the residential designations, so the yellows and sort of oranges and browns, those are different densities of residential development, for example, and that's expressed as units per net acre. And then the reds are commercial, and that's expressed as floor area ratio, so the amount of square footage you can have relative to the size of the property. And then the purples, that's heavy industry, purple and lavender, heavy and light industry. You see the refineries really pop there. So this map I'll go into for Kensington now. This is the current Kensington land use map. And so, as you're all aware, most of it is residential, most of the community. Some public uses, a couple commercial areas, and then the cemetery has an open space designation. So one of the things we're doing with this general plan update is updating the map, because it's really outdated and inaccurate in a lot of cases. So one that affects Kensington, well, it doesn't really, but it might seem like it, is that you see this single family residential high density designation, 5 to 7.2 dwelling units per net acre. Well, when you look at the map and you can see the parcels there, you can see that some of them are far more dense, or they're far more dense than others. But yeah, they all have the same designation. So one of the things we want to do is improve the accuracy of the map. So this is the proposed map, and what you'll see is there are different designations now for the different residential areas based on their actual density. We also pulled back the commercial areas to be only on parcels that are actually commercial. You'll see on the previous map, the commercial areas extend out into residential properties. So we brought them back to commercial properties, added a mixed use area over at Calusa Circle, the bottom left. And then we're going to treat cemeteries now as a public and semi-public use. So it went from open space to that designation. But so these two residential designations, we have about 12 residential land use designations now countywide. And that's really a lot in modern planning. Sacramento County, they have 4 for all of their residential uses. And so we've dialed it back to 7. And so we've compressed and combined some, added a couple new ones. But what you'll see here is that we have this called residential low medium density, 3 to 7 units per acre. So that one's sort of similar to the existing that's 5 to 7.2. The next one is 7 to 17. And that's residential medium density. And people see this and they go, wow, wait a minute, 17 units per acre. Well, we have applied that here because those more dense areas of Kensington actually already fall into that bracket. 4,000 square foot lots or so. An acre is 43,560 square feet. So if you're looking at 4,000 square foot lots, then you take into account the rights of way, you're looking at around 10 units per acre. So the existing map is inaccurate because it tops out at 7. When in actuality, the density in some of these places is more like 10. So that's why there's a change. And we can talk more about that, of course, later on if you'd like. So that's the draft land use map as it stands right now. The other new thing in this general plan is what's called community.
Question on that last one.
Yeah.
Not that I have an interest, but in the commercial zone around the Calusta Circle. for
Sure.
years,
Yeah.
There was a planned use development, right, approved for it way back when. We've had countless, Patrick, help me here. We had countless people come and want to do different stuff there. Does that shrink that zone then? I mean, it's mixed use instead of commercial, but that's
Yeah.
limiting the commercial, right? I don't exactly know what the red zone is, but what you've now got as a Calusa Circle goes from commercial to mixed use. Does that matter for people who come in front of us for any designation really, or we'd still look at it for what it is? Commercial.
Yeah. So I'll toggle back and forth so we can see how much of it was commercial on the existing map. And so when we look at the new map, all in all, there's less area designated for commercial uses, right? There's that little patch right there, right on the edge of Alameda County. And then the mixed use, excuse me, battling a bit of a cold here, is more the properties just on the circle, really, or kind of along, that, or that kind of when we looked at it logically might be developed in there. So the mixed use allows, residential and or commercial uses. So
okay. Yeah.
it is intended to allow more flexibility there, maybe allow people to do something, but
Okay.
it doesn't affect the legality of any of the existing uses, for example.
Perfect. Okay, thanks.
So,
Sure.
Will, I have a question on the previous, the existing map, right? So
Sure.
that's 5 to 7. And of course, I'm looking at my own property anyway, but so I guess my question is understanding that the new map, which you can switch to, that's the current map. And then the new map shows things that are 3 to 7 and then 7 to 17, while the old map was, I don't know, 3 to 7. Was that right?
All of it was 5 to 7.2.
5 to 7. And so I guess my question is, I understand these were based on the current, the new one is based on what is existing. But my question is, why do we need to, why is the county thinking that we need to change that designation?
So this is something that we're doing countywide, and you'll notice that the names also change. So on the current map, it's single family residential high. The new map, it's just residential. And so the zoning will take care of the single and multifamily. But what the county, I think, fell into 30 years ago was a trend where the general plan, people kind of forget that first word is general and that it doesn't have to specify everything down to the, every little thing. And so there's a tendency or the planning practice now, as I was saying, Sacramento County only has 4 total. And so, it's sufficient to say this is residential at this density. Now, Kensington is the example I always use when I describe this to people, because we have a designation that matches the density of things now, but it's called multiple family low. So the conundrum is, well, do you give it the name that matches the type of unit, single family high, but stops at 7? So it matches the unit type, but not the density. Or do you go up to the next one, which matches the density, but not the unit type? So we don't have, so, you have to pick one. And so by taking away the single and multi family names, it's just residential and a density now. And so it's going to be accurate. The other thing is that there are so many more types of housing that people are trying to build now that don't fit cleanly into any of these. So things like tiny homes, right? They are detached, but they are at a density that is what we currently call, I mean, I've seen tiny home projects that hit a density of what in our current general plan we call multiple family high. And so as people come in with these types of projects, then it's like, oh man, well, which one, which designation is the right designation for these? So now it's going to be simpler. Residential, this many, and whichever one it fits in, it fits in. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing this. And like I said, it's countywide for that reason, to fix all of these areas where things are inaccurate. And this is especially true in the western part of the county, the areas that were developed before even there was zoning in the county, right? So they just don't match. I mean, Crockett's another really good example where you have 2,000, 2,500 square foot lots, and the zoning says you need 6,000 square feet, they just don't match. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I guess there just needs to be a lot of education to the public, because as the first knee-jerk reaction to that, meaning it seems to me like, oh, well, I can get, somebody's gonna put a 17 unit
Right.
on the property, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just a matter of understanding the designation of what the current property.
I was just beginning my plans, Patrick, to.
So
That's all I'm just trying to say, because
Yeah.
I'm hoping
If I
that
could,
that
yes.
will be a very clear message. I think all of this is great. I'm saying that to Will, but I'm just saying that the message really needs to be, don't necessarily look at the designation per se of the old one. It's still residential, and it still needs to fit within the same criteria that, that we're looking at least for Kensington, that we look at. So.
Well, and there's going to be, and I'm going to get to the zoning in a second, which will add clarity to it as well. And I think also help to allay some fears that people might have about that 17 number.
Yeah.
So the existing general plan also has a section called policies for specific geographic areas. And these are policies, as the name implies, that are specific to the various unincorporated communities, and there are a handful for Kensington. In the new general plan, that'll be replaced by what's called the community profile. And here are just a couple pages from Kensington's draft profile. And if you're familiar with the existing general plan, I mean, it's just like a textbook, I mean, it just is page after page, black and white, kind of dry, looks like a textbook from the early 90s, maybe. Looks worse. They at least had photos. And so this, as you can see, is much spiffier. We're going to have maps. We're going to have some demographic information, some history about the community. And then if y'all remember back to 2019, we did have some community meetings in Kensington at the library, and we got input from residents. And so those are reflected in the policies here and the actions. There are more pages. There's also a page called Guiding Principles. And so we tried to reflect the input of the residents, because this is Kensington's part of the general plan, just for Kensington. So, however, the community profiles are also the first thing we ever produced. And so we're in the process right now of going back and updating them, because there are some things in here that are that we knew what we knew would happen is that as we develop the general plan, there would be countywide policies that would address some of the things in these individual profiles. And then because they'd be countywide policy, they didn't have to be in each profile. So, the countywide policies are hundreds and hundreds of them. So we're doing that now, but I do want to point out, and this can be accessed on the website for the project, which I'll put up at the end. But if you're able to see it, like on number 3, policy 3, policy 4, you see that parenthetically at the end, it'll say 3-211 and 213, 214. Those are the existing Kensington policies in the general plan. So those it's indicating that this is being carried forward. Now we've reworded them a little. We just have different syntax and different way of stating things in the new general plan, but that the gist of those policies, and these are the ones that were adopted along with the ordinance about 15 years ago for your design review process. Those are the policies that came with that. So that's really exciting new part of the general plan. I did want to talk about fire safety. Here's a screenshot of the fire hazard severity zones in the area. So as you can see, the VHFHSZ is the very high fire hazard severity zone. And there's a policy in the general plan. In fact, yeah, it might be the next. When we talk about these countywide policies, we have one here. It's 7.1 there under wildfire hazards that says prohibit new subdivisions, residential subdivisions in very high fire hazard severity zones, and limit residential subdivisions to 4 or fewer lots in high fire hazard severity zones. So going back to the 7 to 17, this is where all these things start working together. You couldn't subdivide anymore in the parts of Kensington that have that are in the very high fire hazard severity zone. And as we see from this map, that's pretty much all of Kensington. So even though that 17 does look scary on the map, this policy later on in the general plan says, yeah, but we're not subdividing anymore in these high fire hazard areas. So if someone walked in the door and said, hey, I get to build 17, I can divide this into 17, we'd say, yeah, but there's this policy that says you can't. So, and that's also countywide. So next I'll jump to the zoning code. So, it has zoning districts that are similar to what you saw in the general plan land use map. And so we have these districts like R6 single family residential, and we have all these R's, all these M's for multifamily, various commercial designations like neighborhood business, retail business, general commercial, heavy and light industry, et cetera. And so the zoning is required to be consistent with the general plan by state law. So we will have a zoning map that accompanies the general plan map. And I'll show you that for Kensington in a second. We don't have the new map yet, but I'll show you the existing one. But zoning, it's the finer level of detail, right? It tells us what the permitted uses are in all the different zones, what permitting requirements are, and then our development standards, right? So parcel size, setbacks, parking, lighting, signage, all these things that make the built environment look the way it looks. That's, also the zoning has a big part in that. And so as you see at the bottom, so as I said, the zoning implements the general plan. So where the zoning or the general plan says residential, going back to our map, the zoning will say single family or multifamily or mixed use, although we have a general plan mixed use designation as well. So here is Kensington's current zoning map. The whole place is R6, residential, 6,000 square feet. Again, as we know, a lot of lots in Kensington are not 6,000 square feet. So we are going to have an accompanying new zoning district, R4. There's also going to be an R2. And they are going to be 2,000 and 4,000 square feet. So Kensington, what we envision happening is on that same overlaid on that same area that has the 7 to 17 density, you get the R4 zone, which pretty much matches the existing lots. And so 4 does not go into 43,000. 4,000 doesn't go into 43,000 17 times, right? So that's kind of the backstop against that. You still need 4,000 square foot lots. So still need, can only get 10 or so. So that's another guard against against going to that higher density in that land use designation. And then, I'm sorry, excuse me. And then finally is the climate action plan. So, and I forgot to mention, the zoning code was adopted in 1947. So and it's never really been comprehensively updated. It's been piecemeal updated, either because some legislation comes from Sacramento that says we have to, or in response to community desires, like the Kensington ordinance that was passed, back in where I think when it was around 2004, I'm thinking, and various other things. But no one's ever taken it and said, okay, we're overhauling this thing. So it's in its 70s, so it was time. But the climate action plan is only from 2015. It's relatively new, and the purpose of it is that it contains greenhouse gas reduction goals for the unincorporated county, and it's really our strategy that we want to implement to reach those goals. But it's being updated now because things are always changing in the world of climate. A new, always better understanding of the problem. Again, new legislation always coming from the state, new goals from the state, new strategies, new technologies to try and address, to try and reduce greenhouse gases. So we decided that even though this is a relatively new plan, just to make it mesh well with the general plan as a policy document, we would be updating it as well. And then finally, there's the EIR. So the California Environmental Quality Act requires us to prepare an environmental impact report for all these documents to analyze the impact of these policy changes. So our consultant will start working on the EIR in earnest pretty soon here. When we do that, there will be a 30-day initial scoping period where the public and agencies tell us, here's what we think you should analyze in addition to what's required by statute to analyze. And then when the draft document is finished, there will be another public review period, minimum 45 days, where we accept comments on the adequacy, and then we respond to those and revise the draft if necessary. So that's probably going to be coming out around the end of next year. Oh, I'm sorry, middle of next year. Opportunities for public involvement. So we had, well, number one is the website, envisioncontracosta2040.org. On that website, well, actually, there are a couple of things I'll show you in a second from the website. But then we had those community meetings, all those meetings back in 2019, MAC meetings. And then we've had meetings with so many different commissions and committees. These are only a few of them. We also went to the Library Commission. All kinds of them that we go to. So there have been many public meetings where we've presented on Envision, where we've worked through the policy language and such, and we've also been at many more meetings where we were invited to speak by community-based organizations, NGOs, things like that, and it's been all the way from the Crockett Lions Club to the Western States Petroleum Association, and pretty much everyone in between. And so there's been a lot of public outreach at this point, over 100 meetings that we've been involved in. So on the website, online participation, you can sign up for the mailing list at envisioncontracosta2040.org/online-engagement. There you can sign up for the mailing list. You can submit photos, you can do all sorts of things. There are a few different tools on the online engagement portion of the website. You'll receive emails about meetings. There's a calendar so people can follow easily when things are happening. Also, of course, we send out an e-blast when an important part of the document is being released. And then here is the documents page on the Envision website. And here you can see, excuse me again, the draft community profiles are there. So you can go and look at Kensington's draft profile along with all the others, the current and draft land use maps I showed you, all of the general plan goals, goals, policies, and actions that have been drafted so far. So all the different elements are there, except for the growth management element. That's the one, it's kind of a one-off unusual element, so it's not in there, but you can go and look at those hundreds and hundreds of goals, policies, and actions that apply countywide. So they'll apply in Kensington, they'll apply in Alamo, they'll apply in Bethel Island, and then all the other things here, the CAP documents, environmental justice, background docs, etc. And so that's all I have. So actually, I will go to one more slide and give you my contact info, and then and I will pass this, of course, on to Robert if you'd like to have it or distribute it, and then let me know when I should stop the screen share, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
And it's something of what you had mentioned at the end, and just a question. And I'll just say one thing: great work that the county's been doing on this. I imagine it's a lot of work with a lot of meetings, with a lot of input, with a lot to gather. So I applaud you to be able to condense your presentation in probably less than 15 slides. So that's great. I have a question, though, specific question, and it relates to Kensington in general. You had the draft policy, you have the draft community profiles that you had mentioned, and there's one for Kensington, and you had mentioned that the Kensington I guess we could call it the Kensington ordinance, or the Kensington part that is part of the county plan, is in there. So my question is, the Kensington ordinance has been in effect since 2004, and it took a long time just to get to that point. And to get that point was then also the county's input of how to implement that for Kensington only. So my question is that if the language is changing from that general plan policy, is it a matter that it will become an issue that Kensington or KMAC, pretty much KMAC, will have to make assure that the policy that, I'm going to say, the specific ordinance language is the same or equal to what the county is proposing? And I'm asking that because we always get, one of the things that Kensington residents, especially the Kensington residents that worked on the ordinance for such a long time and finally got implemented, is that we've never had an amendment or any change to the language of that ordinance. And we keep that ordinance in terms of how we make our recommendations to the county. So my question is, like I said, is it going to be posed in front of KMAC to say, yes, that sounds great. That's in keeping with the spirit and the language that was in 2004.
So we're not touching the ordinance itself. It's just the policy language, and we're cleaning it up to be consistent with the way we're phrasing things in the new general plan. So our intent is that there is no change in meaning or effectiveness with this new language. Now, and I could bring it all up in screen share, but you probably noticed that there was one policy that referenced 3 existing policies. So that's one thing we're trying to do, because it's just condense things, and if we can say it in one sentence or a couple sentences, get the same point across, we're trying to do that. So I would recommend maybe that if you take a look at what we have there and compare it to the existing, and if you feel that it's not, that something's missing, that it doesn't have the same emphasis or the same protections as the existing, we'd love to know that, and we can work on it. But we definitely, we're trying to avoid that. There's no reason to water it down or anything. And like I said, the ordinance itself, we don't plan to touch unless you want us to. What I didn't explain actually is that, so I kept mentioning goals, policies, and actions. So the goals are that there are our aspirations, our goals. The policies are the rules we're going to live by, and then the actions are the to-do list. So an action could be, review the Kensington ordinance, and for, I don't know how it'd be phrased, but basically take a look at it. It's been almost 20 years, and just review it to see if there's anything that needs. That could be an action in the Kensington profile. That's exactly the type of thing that should, that a community profile is about, is these specific these items that are specific to each community. For what it's worth, East Richmond Heights wants to copy your ordinance, and we have policy language in their profile that mimics yours, and then an action to develop an ordinance like yours.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering my question.
You're welcome. You're letting me off easy so far. I think at East Richmond Heights, we were there for 2 hours, right, Roger? Robert? I called you Roger. Robert. Actually, you weren't there, were you?
No worries, Will. I understand that's the case. My colleague Edgar was helping you out there. So yeah, our KMAC is a pretty professional outfit.
Well, since you mentioned it, I'll mention whether.
Oh, there we go.
It's always one of the things that has provided some level of discussion, and that is the state ordinance regarding ADUs and our review of ADUs. I think there has been language or how we can still work with the ordinance, but what we actually can review has been the subject of much discussion. So I guess one of the things that I would hope to, it probably won't be in this, but some sort of, it would be maybe a policy of understanding of particular building types like an ADU, of whether or not KMAC has any, has the right, if neighbors in the area have the right actually to even discuss the issue. This is not making an action, but discuss the issue. And I think that, to me, I find that I understand the intent of the state ordinance, but I don't understand why there isn't any discussion about density in those areas. So public discussion. Respect people.
When you say, well, yeah, the state has basically said it's all off the table. That if you have an ordinance, well, you shall have an ordinance, and then when people comply, they just get to do it, you know, by right, just like any other by right use. So, yeah, we actually get this comment a lot in these meetings, and we give the same answer each time, that the state has basically told the county and the cities, you can't do anything. You can't, once someone complies, they comply. I was in Diablo a couple months ago, and you know, they have you know, very high fire hazard danger there, limited access in and out. And I was meeting with the residents on a particularly narrow street with tiny lots, and they were saying the same thing. So, you know, you're telling me that the county, someone could build another unit back here, and we have no, and there's no place to park. I said, yep, sorry. The state tied our hands. You know, when I started with the county 21 years ago, you needed a use permit for a second unit, and there was discretion, and that's just no longer the case. I don't have a better answer for you than that.
Now, I like I said, I understand the issue. I guess the question is, like I said, that it's an administrative, it's just, there's no, I guess you would say, a review publicly that can happen. And I just find that whether or not you can do anything about it, but I do think that there should be a way that people could be heard. And I don't think that's necessarily against the state law necessarily, but I would think that there's got to be an opportunity. You mentioned Diablo, Kensington. These are small communities that are Orinda, whatever, that are small communities that really rely on the county for administrative advice. They don't have necessarily that type of, KMAC is the body that the people in the community rely on us to hopefully make good recommendations. However, if we're not even able to even make any sort of discussion on it, then I feel that that's really not in keeping with keeping the, I'm going to say, the needs of the community met in terms of our responsiveness to them. So I guess that's only my question on that. It's not that you can stop it, but I just feel like saying that we can't do anything about it because it's a done deal finds, to me, it's not a really well written document based on just the community at large, not necessarily the individual who's actually making the application or why they're making the application. But as we talk in all our meetings, change happens in our neighborhood, and people don't like change in most cases. And when they can't say or do anything about it, that's even worse. And so I think whether or not they could do anything about it, but they should be able to be heard about it. And so that's why I'm just trying to raise that issue, only because I think that that particular portion of the ordinance, how it's interpreted, is not really, it's a consequence that was probably not foreseen when it was voted upon on the intent. So
The ordinance
my
or
sense.
the county's ordinance or the legislation that
The
requires it?
legislative
Yeah.
ordinance and then the county's interpretation of the legislative. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is that, you know, just because you can't have an administrative review doesn't mean that you can't have a discussion on it. That's what I'm trying to say. The review meaning there needs to be an action, like yes, no. But I really think that if there's, and I think we made it a way that if in fact that it is over the FAR or it blocks somebody's view, maybe that works out, but I don't even think that would necessarily stand up in a court of law, because basically the ordinance, the county, the state code is saying you have no administrative review. I just think that you know, at least the county has somewhat responded for KMAC, for Kensington and KMAC, to actually be able to review when really the state ordinance says no, there's no review. Does that make sense to me? Do you? I mean,
Well,
it's probably a tricky thing. I'm only thinking about the neighborhood. I'm thinking about Kensington and the neighborhood. I'm not necessarily thinking about the state intent and the why it was written. It's just that we have so many things that people feel disenfranchised because they can't say or do anything on something that actually matters to them very personally. And that, to me, just as much as, you know, you're talking about the Envision 2040 and what my question, what's seeing the map, if people are able to talk about it, then they understand it. If they aren't able to talk about it, then they really don't understand it. And that just creates a lot of animosity, I'm going to say,
yeah.
to the state and the county. And that's all I'm saying in that sense. And so whether or not the plan kind of talks about those situations, it probably doesn't, but I would hope that somehow the policy that is envisioned through the county would be able to at least allow some sort of discussion, whether or not the project is approved and stamped because it's met all this stuff or not. That's just my opinion, and the way that when we have all these meetings of KMAC and these residents, these projects that we see, I can't imagine if we ever had no projects to review, and that's the reason why KMAC was created, so people can actually have some say about what's happening around their neighborhood. I don't need an answer necessarily. I am just telling you, you know, what I see. And if you're asking for input, that would be my input in terms of how it affects KMAC, how it affects Kensington and the residents that live here. Those are really important issues that, you know, the county had partially addressed through that, but I don't think it's been fully addressed and fully understood, at least to KMAC members, of what we actually reviewed. I'll just say that last month was probably the first ADU that we actually reviewed. And it wasn't because it was an ADU, it's because they went 3 stories instead. And so if the county didn't put that issue in there, they would have said that, oh, I'm sorry, that's administrative review. You have no say on it, and neither do the neighbors.
Yeah, the ADU seems to trump everything. So my 6-story, 17-unit ADU is in the works, Patrick. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get that. To Patrick's point, I get what he's saying. The whole point of this is for the community to have a say. And I mean, I know you guys know it too, but the state has basically said, doesn't matter, the ADU trumps all. So it's almost kind of like it's a free pass to do what you want to do. And the same concerns the community originally brought up, which is small lots, view, right? Mostly it's view, right? Ultimately the view of the, you know, the bay and other things. So we're losing our ability to speak to that if there isn't, you know, a review of something, because it just goes right through.
and
The comment, right? It's, again, you can't answer it. I'm sure you're handcuffed by the state too, but that would be,
Yeah.
it's just kind of BS that we don't have a say just because they've got the golden pass.
yeah, I mean, the state has, that's the edict, right? That the ADU, gets to go, no, pretty much no matter what. It trumps, our tree ordinance.
Yeah.
And that was actually the big point of contention with the folks in Diablo that I was meeting with, was that someone was taking out a protected tree to put in an ADU. And so, or at least I believe that was the situation. I don't know if it was code protected, but it was a prominent tree that they didn't want to see removed. And but yeah, the state, and with a lot of these housing laws, I mean, it's very intentional too, right? I mean, it is to take away the local review. It is to take away any potential obstacles, and to make housing happen. And, like there's this one that they just approved that allows housing in commercial zones if you meet certain requirements. And if you have some affordable units in there, you might get it by right. No review, just a ministerial review. Do you meet the zoning standards, for example? So the state is making it easier and easier all the time. But yeah, there's nothing we can do about the ADUs. I think part of the, having a process where there's no outcome if you have a meeting about something just to tell people we can't do anything about this, it's informational and people can express their opinion about the project. But if you can't affect the outcome, I think, then I don't know if it does more detriment if people come to a meeting thinking they're going to express their views on a project, and then they're told, thanks for coming, but there's nothing we can do in response to what you just told us. I don't know. I'm just kind of,
But well, wouldn't you
I guess,
say that if you were able,
editorializing.
but wouldn't you say that if you had that, even if it was said, hey, you can't do anything about it, but we're having this meeting because we want to express what those issues are that could affect either the neighbor or the community, that in turn may not help for that particular project. But I would be on my congressperson to actually say, or my state representative and state senator to say, listen, I don't think this is right. What can you do about it? They're the ones that actually they represent the community at large. But if the community at large doesn't know about how that could happen, then there's no action. And so that's why part of it is not the particular project that's being reviewed may not make any difference. But if you have a lot of projects that are like that, then frankly, I think people will kind of stand up and realize we need to have a change in that. There needs to be a discussion on that. And you cannot just shut out the neighbors that's going to be affected because the state is mandating housing. That, to me, I find that that's a consequence that could happen if we were able to at least be able to talk about it. So that's just a point again, and I don't know if that's shared by all the KMAC members, but I really feel the most important part is understanding, knowledge, and communication. And if you don't have those things, then you're destined to have a lot of unhappy, I'm going to say, people, neighbors that feel like they have no power in terms of making change. And that's what we live in, a place where we can make change and make a difference. So that's a biggest stand. I want to step off my soapbox now and then two others.
Robert, I saw your hand up, so I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to chime in really briefly. I sympathize with a lot of what's been said on all sides. It is important to understand the context, right? This action on the state level is somewhat extreme, and it is the result of a policy and a system that has been wildly broken for a long time, and the fruits of which we see today with a housing and homelessness crisis we've never seen before. So the pendulum is swung perhaps too far in the other direction, but I think that the governor and state legislators believe that they really needed to go aggressively in order to pave the way for a remedy to this housing supply imbalance that is so egregious at the state level. So, it's not perfect. It's a work in progress. I would definitely recommend everybody, reach out to your governor, reach out to your state legislators. Different opportunities for democratic input at the community level are probably warranted, and we could devise ways where that input could be heard, appreciated, and ultimately used in a way that doesn't stifle housing, but makes housing policy smarter. But again, that's just my 2 cents. I just wanted to say that, imperfect as it is, today's reality is a reaction to a massively broken situation that some people were desperate to remedy.
Right, any other comments or questions from the KMAC members?
Again, just thank you. Will, appreciate you coming and spending the time with us and sharing.
Yes.
You're welcome.
very
Thanks for
much
having me.
so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's great.
Oh, one last question. Well, when do you think you may come back to us again or KMAC again? Is it another
2040.
6 months? Or
Yeah,
2040?
exactly. 2040. Well, so we actually have the entire draft general plan in-house now. We're giving it an internal review, which is pretty extensive, many county departments. So we're going to be turning it back over to our consultant this year. They will then start work on the environmental impact report, and we anticipate that everything will be released for public review around mid-2023. So, really, it's at your pleasure. These meetings, we kind of, the max will come whenever we're summoned, but we're not going to have a document, until like probably mid-year next year. If you would like to have another meeting, maybe once that is out for public review, and once there's something to really respond to in totality, that might be a good time.
Yeah, I think that would be good, only just because I think that if understood that if there's the time frame of the public review and it's been out, sounds like mid 2023, that's probably you're going to get the most input from the public, at least through these meetings. And I'm saying it also from KMAC as well, just because I think that would be an appropriate time frame for us and for all those to understand.
Yeah.
So, because I don't think you're going to go directly to those community meetings again, are you not?
No, we weren't planning on having any more. At this point, it will be kind of a we will broadcast it, right? It'll be on, we have Instagram. Our department, we have Nextdoor, Instagram, Facebook, all these ways to connect with people. The supervisors each have their emails they send out to their constituents and newsletters and things like that. So there will be an outreach blitz when it happens.
Okay. All right. So we look forward to seeing you in mid 2023 then.
All right. Sounds good.
Mark that on the calendar.
Will do.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate your joining us. That's great. I think that's
I'll make a
it.
motion to recommend the closing of the meeting at 8:05 p.m.
Right before you do that, just please let me express my gratitude. Thank you so much, Will, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Patrick and the KMAC, for quickly being able to approve this meeting to occur. It was important to Supervisor Joya as well. We really appreciate it.
You bet.
So noted. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Will.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night. So with that, I heard
A motion to adjourn at 8:06.
8:06.
Second.
We got a motion from Chris to adjourn, and we have a second from Lloyd. Any discussion? All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, raise your hand. So Chris, Roel, Lloyd, and Patrick say aye, no nays. So have a great night, have a great week, have a great rest of the month. Happy Halloween and all those kind of things.